Welcome to this very special edition of Newshour. We've come to the Global Space Exploration Conference to meet a leading figure in the international space sector. The Executive Director of the International Astronautical Federation, Dr. Christian Feitinger, joins us on today's show. Well, thank you very much for joining us. It's great to speak to you. I do want to ask you about the scope and the future vision of the IAF, but before we get to that, I'd like some reassurance, if that's okay. You said recently that you want to encourage governments to work together to collaborate more, and one of the reasons for that is to prevent an asteroid strike or a very real threat to the planet. So I guess what I'm asking you is, how likely is a disaster movie scenario? Are we going to be subject to giant waves engulfing the Empire State Building anytime soon?
Well, that's of course a very difficult question to answer. But let me reconfirm that, of course, the mission of the International Astronautical Federation is to foster and support setting up cooperations between governments, between industries, and all kind of stakeholders we have. And the reason, of course, is not only, as you mentioned, one of the reasons in order to work together for Earth protection against asteroid strikes, but there are many other reasons why agencies, countries, industries should work together. Looking into exploration, and we are here at the Global Space Exploration Conference here in New Delhi. These are projects that involve such huge financial means, also manpower, efforts, that they can only be successful when they are done in cooperation. We've heard this morning several of heads of agencies already talking about their projects in exploration, including also what they are doing in terms of looking how can Earth be saved from an asteroid strike. And there are several missions that will demonstrate the ability to change the trajectory of an asteroid. That has been done already by NASA once, of course. So all this tells you that the agencies are very well aware of the threat, and they are also very well aware of the fact that cooperating in this area is a must and is imperative. But answering your question, I'm afraid I'll not be in the position to give you an exact date, and most probably nobody will do, because if there were already a clear target or an asteroid that is already kind of poised to be on confrontation with planet Earth, I think we would have heard from the agencies, and they would maybe work even closer together and more intensively together in order to avoid this. But I think it is really important to prepare and to be ready for this, because it's not good enough to start thinking about it when the case comes, and the case can come and the case will come. The question is just when. And this is a big question mark. It is also involving, of course, early detection activities, so this is very important. But it is also the development of the technology and the cooperation that will be able to save us.
One of the themes of this conference has been a renaissance in space exploration. This time around, though, does it feel different? Are the more actors involved? I mean, obviously, the heyday of the late 1960s, it was really dominated by two big powers. Now, Central Asia, South Caucasus, China, India, there are many other innovators involved. So has the complexion of the sector changed a lot?
Yeah, I think there is really a significant change. While, as you rightfully said, in the past it was kind of a domain, space exploration was a domain for the so-called space nations, the US, the Soviet Union, then of course gradually Europe also, India, China. but in it, JAXA, Japan, of course, as well. But gradually now, other countries, emerging space countries, where you would think that what would be the reason for them to join a global space exploration effort? They are joining in. They are signing, on the one hand side, the Artemis Accords with the US. Some others are joining and signing the agreement on the International Lunar Research Station with the Chinese. And that tells you that even countries that are not well known as space nations yet have realized the potential of space exploration. They don't want to be left aside. They want to be part of it, and one important reason certainly is that space exploration is most probably the most inspiring field for the next generation, for the general public, and it will kind of pay off very, very strongly. We've seen several countries that have just recently initiated astronauts programs. I mean, it started with the UAE. Now we've seen Turkey has sent their two astronauts, actually, one with Axiom, one with Virgin. Now, others are following, and I think the inspiration which space exploration, specifically human space exploration, which astronauts bring to the general public, to the youth, is tremendous. And there are studies that show very clearly that the number of young people that choose STEM education for their profession actually is quite dependent on the inspiration they get, and astronauts are a great source of inspiration.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point you make about that payoff, because of course some of that payoff is really happening, now, isn't it? Of course, it's not just about developing the ability to live on the moon or live on Mars, things far into the future, but there are also engineering, innovation, problems that are being solved now that relate to really urgent problems like climate change, for example.
Yeah, of course, it's a question of development of technologies as well, and space is here on the forefront certainly, and staying behind or staying outside this development is certainly not something which any country should do, and more countries are getting to this point to say, okay, we cannot do it ourselves, we don't have the means, we don't have the technology yet, but let's be part. And they start small and they grow, and I think this is only very fruitful and very, very productive for the global space exploration effort, because kind of it brings humankind together. There is also an inspirational and maybe even philosophical point behind this. And on the other hand, it has as you mentioned, very, very concrete benefits also, because technology development helps us not only save Earth from astronauts, but also save Earth from what we are doing to Earth ourselves, climate change.
I wanted to talk about another area which is different now to 30 or 40 years ago, 50 years ago even, and that's the role that private companies are playing in the development and the growth of the sector. Obviously, many, many years ago, it was predominantly just state-owned agencies. What role have private companies got now, and particularly technology, smaller innovators? Are they really key to really developing the next 10 or 20 years of space exploration?
Definitely, yes. I think this tendency was predominantly kind of initiated in the US and is now swapping over, of course, to all other countries. I mean, everywhere, of course, taxpayers' money is also always limited. And if you want to do great things, you need to kind of find other sources. So it was not easy, but I think the space community has managed to excite the private sector to invest in space. Not only waiting for government money to get contracts, but also investing their own money, taking risk. It's always a question of sharing risk. And of course, there are still certain domains like space exploration, which needs still very strong government funding and government support. But there are other areas which today are already totally commercialized. If you look into the communication sector or also meteorological sector. So in between this, there is a change going on now. And I think it will be very interesting to monitor and to observe how this will further develop. Space economy is growing at a rapid pace, and it's stunning the figures you hear, how this will also develop in the coming years.
And looking ahead, what is your hope, your message to all of these entities, governments, private sector, that are very clearly working together? But what are the big ticket objectives that you wish that we could get solved over the next 12, 24 months?
Well, I'm not sure that we will be able to solve these big issues over the next 12, 24 months, because the big issues on the table are certainly how can space contribute to the fight against climate change. Exploration is a big topic. How will corporations be set up in the future in order to assure that we will be able to see again a human on the moon, and what needs to be done in order to really conquer Mars in the sense. Can I just
ask about that? Because I think so many people would want to know, when is that likely to happen, do we think?
Well, if you listen to the big actors, the US and China, this should happen before 2030. So wow. That will be my guess and my hope.
Wow, amazing. Something to look forward to. It's great to speak to you again. Thank you very much for speaking to A News and to sharing all that wisdom with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.